North Korea's most arrogant general had just respectfully sent his leader onto the plane, and the next second he signaled his subordinates to carry the SA-18 portable air defense missiles and fired at the helicopter. Then he led his troops armed with AK-47s to attack the Wonsan Air Defense Base. He took control of an intercontinental missile silo equipped with nuclear warheads, and his goal was to bomb the Blue House in South Korea. The admiral then sent a MiG-29 fighter jet emitting black smoke across the 38th parallel and into South Korean airspace. South Korean satellites detected enemy troops illegally entering the border. The Air Force Command immediately ordered two F-15 fighter jets cruising near the 38th parallel to intercept. As the F-153 planes surrounded the MiG-29 from the left and right, the North Korean pilots immediately shook the fuselage left and right to indicate that they were here to surrender. But just as the two South Korean fighter planes were escorting the North Korean fighter plane back to the base, the command center discovered that another North Korean MiG-29 fighter plane was flying across the 38th parallel at a speed of Mach 2. The South Korean Air Force commander sensed something was wrong and immediately ordered pilot number 1 to continue leading the North Korean fighter planes, while pilot number 2, Anya, hurried back to the vicinity of the 38th parallel to intercept the enemy planes. At the same time, two F-15 fighter jets were sent to the ground for support. But when Anya saw that the other party also showed the left and right swinging flying action, thinking that the pilot was coming to surrender again, he relaxed his guard and used sign language to signal the North Korean pilot to follow him back to the base. Unexpectedly, just as Anya approached the MiG, the North Korean pilot suddenly performed a 360-degree lateral maneuver and quickly flew towards the first surrendered North Korean fighter plane. Then pressed the button to launch a ham missile. Then the MiG-29 increased its speed and climbed vertically. Seeing this, Anya quickly pushed the joystick to the bottom and tried his best to catch up with the enemy plane. Seeing that the F-15 had already flown below it, the MiG-29 immediately dove down and fired a 30mm single-barreled machine gun shell. It successfully hit the right wing of the F-15 fighter jet, temporarily got rid of the pursuers and flew towards Seoul. The F-15 fighter jets that came to support the enemy quickly locked onto the enemy plane, but when the pilot was about to press the missile launch button, the commander ordered all fighter jets not to fire, citing the safety of urban residents. Only containment is allowed. Once the MiG-29s fly over Seoul, they are deployed on the ground. The MiG-29's anti-aircraft missiles would shoot it down, so an F-15 fighter jet flew right in front of the MiG-29, using itself as a live target to lure the MiG-29 out of Seoul's airspace. But the North Korean pilots were not fooled at all. Rushing recklessly towards the center of Seoul. This was not enough. The MiG-29 immediately lowered its altitude, crossed the streets of Seoul, and flew straight towards the Seoul 3 building, the tallest building in South Korea. North Korean pilots flew MiG-29 fighter jets and bombed downtown Seoul. Shin prepared to escape. Seeing this, the two South Korean F-15 fighter jets that came to intercept quickly locked onto it. But just as the Korean pilot was about to launch the missile, the MiG-29 suddenly performed a Cobra maneuver and climbed up, circled behind one of the F-15s, and fired wildly at the rear of the F-15. The pilot had no time to dodge and was hit on the tail by the MiG-29, causing the engine to lose power immediately. Seeing the fighter plane falling uncontrollably, the pilot ejected towards the fire controller in the back row, while he tried his best to hold the joystick to control the fighter plane in order to prevent the F-15 from crashing into the residential area. Fly towards the uninhabited area near the 38th parallel. Seeing that his teammate had no chance of survival, the other F-15 pilot was furious and strongly requested the commander to open fire, but the commander still refused to approve it in order to avoid causing a war. I watched helplessly as the MiG-29 flew across the 38th parallel. Escape back to North Korea. The ejected fire controller Dashuan was forced to land in North Korea due to the wind direction and was caught by the North Korean army. Soon, the news that the North Korean general had triggered a coup spread throughout the world, and the US military quickly dispatched B-2 stealth bombers to support South Korea. However, when the United States took the initiative to bomb the Wonsan base in North Korea, the South Korean commander finally took command of the US military. After being tough for a while, a Sibulan gave us a Tiger controller who was still in the hands of the enemy. We had to rescue him before we could bomb. So South Korea immediately dispatched the Air Force Special Forces in a Chapter 47 transport helicopter and a general helicopter loaded with ammunition. He flew to Wonsan Air Force Base in North Korea to rescue Dashuan, who was held by the enemy. At the same time, Air Force pilot Ania and his comrades took off quickly in the T-50 bomber and F-15 fighter respectively. Their mission was to blow up the Wonsan Air Force Base and its missiles after the Special Forces rescued Dashuan. Missile silos to prevent missile attacks with nuclear warheads. In order to ensure the success of the mission, the Blue House sent the E-737 Peaside early warning aircraft to conduct air command. However, as soon as the two fighter jets crossed the 38th parallel, the monitoring radar at the North Korean base began to beep and sound an alarm. So the North Korean side set up the M1990 anti-aircraft machine gun and fired crazily at the target. Seeing this, Anya controlled the T-50 bomber to dodge flexibly, perfectly avoiding all the bullets, and then quickly locked onto the Wonsan Air Force Base. The entire Wonsan base was suddenly filled with violent explosions. Later, Anya aimed at the hidden hangar of Maruyama base and dropped an air-to-ground rocket. A South Korean pilot was running for his life, while North Korean soldiers behind him were chasing him and shooting wildly. There was only a puff sound. Unfortunately, he was shot in the shoulder and fell to the ground with a thud. At the critical moment, South Korea sent a CH-47 transport plane to arrive in time and caught the North Korean soldiers off guard. After the shooting, the special forces lowered the cable and quickly descended to the ground, successfully rescuing the injured Dashuan. Just then, the North Korean MiG-29 fighter jets that bombed Seoul yesterday took off again and aimed at South Korean F-15 fighter jets. 2 missiles were fired, and the pilot immediately fired back one when he saw this. Immediately, the two fighter planes started chasing each other at an altitude of 1,000 meters. Both of them pulled the joystick to the maximum and used rolling propeller maneuvers to climb. As the two fighters reached their climbing limit, the MiG-29's engine sounded an alarm due to power overload, and the F-15 took the opportunity to activate high-altitude braking and turned its nose 180 degrees towards the MiG-29. Just like that, the MiG-29 was blown into pieces, and the T-50 bomber driven by Ania finally found the missile launcher at the Wonsan base in North Korea. Well, but before it could drop its bombs, the North Korean SAM-5 air defense missiles on the ground locked onto it. Suddenly, 2 air defense missiles were fired at the T-50 at a speed of Mach 3. Seeing this, Ania immediately climbed up and dropped a decoy bomb, forming a barrier behind the fuselage. One of the missiles was successfully intercepted. But the other missile was like a lover, sticking with it and approaching the Su-30 step by step. At this time, the North Korean general had already started the nuclear missile launch procedure. Watching the nuclear missile launch silo cover of the Wonsan base slowly open, Ania no longer cared about the missile behind him. Dived straight towards the silo. Unexpectedly, the M1939 anti-aircraft gun had already been deployed on the ground, firing a series of flames at Anya, causing serious damage to the right wing of the T-50. In a panic, Anya urgently locked onto the launch silo and pressed the launch button. Although the silo was successfully hit, the crisis at the Blue House was successfully resolved, but the missiles behind Anya were still chasing her. In order to get rid of it, Anya decided to take a risk and do some extreme operations. I saw him push the accelerator to the bottom and soar into the sky. When the flight altitude reached 20,000 meters, Ania suddenly shut down the engine. The entire fighter plane instantly lost power and tilted back 45 degrees to stop in the air. The missile missed the T-50 before it had time to react and exploded in the air. Anya reignited the engine and successfully drove the T-50 back to the base. In one word, exciting.